What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on nootropics, testosterone, and male performance. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to the channel. We pump out a lot of content relating to all these topics. Want to mention Torque, still got about 80 or something bottles to sell at 30% off, so right now our loss is your gain, 30% off. Coupon code is 30TORQUE. That's one of our primary most sold, most purchased nootropic stacks, and you can get that bad boy in the description of this video. Okay, so does Adrafinil really decimate your liver? There's been a lot of discussion about this over the course of the last many years in the web. It's actually parroted over and over and over again, largely in anecdotal capacities. And it's something that annoys me just a little bit, so I want to address where it came from, as well as validate or not validate the idea that Adrafinil is liver toxic. What is Adrafinil? Adrafinil is simply put the prodrug for modafinil. Modafinil being one of the most widely used and discussed nootropics or smart drugs, stimulating compounds on the planet. According to the literature, I mean, basically when you ingest Adrafinil, you convert it via your liver into modafinil. It basically has the same mechanism of action. And those mechanisms are partial DAT inhibition, so it's inhibiting the dopamine transporter, and therefore you have a little bit more synaptically available dopamine. You have partial GABA inhibition, which is allowing some of the other monoamines to stay around longer. And you have one of the most primarily influential mechanisms of the aphanyls, which is orexin system activation. Its effects on the orexin system are the primary kind of wakefulness promoting elements of, Adrafinil and modafinil. So its effects are primarily motivation, enhanced stimulation, but not feeling like you're actually taking a stimulant, which is a bizarre feeling. It's like you're firing on all cylinders, but you don't feel like that kind of dirty stimulant feeling. You get a potent wakefulness effect and a general feeling of alertness when you take either of these two compounds. So on Adrafinil, the dose range for most people is going to be between 100 and 400 milligrams, with most people finding kind of a sweet spot in between at 250 to 300 milligrams. And in my experience, yes, it is a very potent nootropic compound that stimulates, again, that stimulation without feeling like you're overstimulated. But look, over the years, Adrafinil's gotten like this bad rap and about liver toxicity, and people continue to parrot this idea that it's toxic to the liver. And anytime anyone says anything about Adrafinil out there on the web, like attached to it is that idea that it's toxic to your liver. Now, the logic behind this is Adrafinil gets administered. Once it reaches the liver, it has to go through a series of metabolic transformations to convert it to modafinil. And because of this liver processing, which, by the way, every drug goes through, that somehow Adrafinil can be liver toxic. I even remember seeing super recently, on a live stream with Derek from More Plates, More Dates, and Vigorous Steve and some other dude, discussing this, where Derek actually had this to say.
The guy who ran FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, have you heard of that whole debacle?
Of course.
Yeah, they have things, yeah.
Thanks for crashing Bitcoin so I could buy more.
Yeah. So his stack apparently involved mainly amphetamine, selegiline, which is a selective MAO. Yeah, and then potentially like Adrafinil, which is like a precursor to modafinil that's liver toxic. Right. But anyways.
So there's that. But, the real question is, where does this all come from, and is it true? Well, I'll give you the answer to the second question. That answer is no. It's not true. And by no, I mean there's no paper or exhaustive study or otherwise like long piece of literature that shows us that Adrafinil is toxic to any liver or even a mechanism by which that can even happen. It just doesn't exist. And look, I've scoured the web for this over many years. Have I missed something over the last 15 years and taking Adrafinil and monitoring my liver enzymes and never having an issue and looking through the literature? But what's really interesting about this is there are anecdotes of people that have tested liver enzymes and taken Adrafinil somewhat frequently. Like this as an example from Longevity. A guy named ZH Mike says, I have not been able to find documentation of Adrafinil and liver damage. I take doses of 600 to 900 milligrams most days a week. I have had LFTs checked, which is liver enzymes. During this time, no elevation. I also drink moderately-ish. And another guy, right, the guy called Medicine Man goes, hey, the reason I take Adrafinil is, as Modamind said, is that modafinil and armodafinil are RX only, meaning prescription only in the States. And by the way, that's one of the main reasons a lot of people take Adrafinil. He goes, interesting, you're not able to find documentation on the matter. Me neither. And look, this is something that sort of annoys me, right? I have never been able to find documentation on this. And Adrafinil is actually a very well-studied supplement. I mean, there are studies behind this of its use, of its effects, of its side effects, because there are some, and none of them point to this idea of liver toxicity. And here's why. It doesn't exist. It was an assumptive postulation that was asserted by someone on like a less than credible, like a blog about nootropics or forum relating to nootropics, right? It's an assertion someone makes. It gets perpetuated throughout the rest of the nootropic sphere. And I'm going to show you how one inaccurate statement about one drug or the other can lead to an unbelievable amount of fear mongering and parroting of the initial statement in this crazy thing that I'm going to just deem parroted regurgitation phenomenon, where like you've got an initial statement, it gets picked up by other people, they start writing about it, it gets repeated over the years, and then the community accepts it as truth when it isn't. Check this out. On the Adrafinil Psychonaut page, it states that long-term supplementation of Adrafinil is not advised, since Adrafinil is metabolized into modafinil in the liver and may stress the liver through elevated liver enzymes with prolonged use. It doesn't say does stress the liver. It doesn't say is toxic for the liver with a reference attached to it. It says may be toxic to the liver. Again, parroted postulation. In an article on Nutriment.com titled Adrafinil Liver Toxicity Risks and Concerns, the author posts this like super nebulous and almost lazy sentence that goes like this. He goes, one of the potential side effects of Adrafinil, also known as Almafon, is the buildup of harmful enzymes in your liver. This Adrafinil liver toxicity or hepatotoxicity has been well documented and is something you need to keep in mind when considering whether or not this is a supplement to add to your routine. Well documented? There is no fucking source there. That is an example of lazy reporting, the endpoint of this parroted regurgitation phenomenon. On another article on modafinil.org titled Modafinil versus Adrafinil, the author states Adrafinil may damage the liver. It goes, this is the most important difference. While Adrafinil is metabolized by the liver, it can cause damage to the functional hepatocytes living there. There have been some reports of the drug causing liver damage after repetitive use. Where are those reports? Although this hasn't officially been proven, thank you, it's better to go with something like modafinil that's been shown to lack liver toxicity. But again, what do you know? There's no link to any of these reports, there's no cited references, and there's no supporting literature. So now we've got this example of the sort of parroted regurgitation phenomenon that happens in the biohacking sphere and related to nootropics and lots of things. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people that think like, I don't know, fruit smoothies are bad because of oxalates or something, you know, and well, there's some element of potential truth in there. And like if you're juicing 77 fucking handfuls of kale every day, then yeah, that may have a harmful buildup of oxalates. But if you're juicing a little handful of kale and some other fruits and vegetables every day, you're probably going to be substantially healthier, have less inflammation, have a lot more antioxidant capacity, and have more brain energy. Anyway, in a drug review of Adrafinil from the American Journal of Psychiatry, we have the following things that are being stated. Number one, although modafinil is regulated by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration as a controlled substance, Adrafinil is sold as an unregulated supplement and can be purchased without the need for prescription. Hence its kind of attractiveness or appeal to the nootropics community or high performance males who like to get things done. Now, I've read this entire review, so this is a pretty extensive review of Adrafinil on the scientific literature side, and you would think that such a kind of well-documented, exhaustive review of such a compound, if there was liver toxicity concerns, would discuss such concerns in a paper like this. If you look through the entire paper, the only mention of the word liver is in the discussion about its metabolism thus. It goes, Adrafinil is a prodrug which is metabolized to the active compound modafinil in vivo via liver metabolism. That's it. On another actual scientific review of the compound titled Adrafinil, a novel vigilance promoting agent. So this is kind of like, it has the same typical format, abstract. It's got the entire study, summary, results, conclusion, the whole nine. It concludes, finally, further investigations of the antidepressive effects of Adrafinil are warranted. In summary, Adrafinil is a novel stimulant that lacks the adverse effects associated with other psychostimulants. So now we actually have clinical literature supporting the fact that it has less adverse effects or no adverse effects compared to other psychostimulants. It directly affects CNS function, that's central nervous system function, but its mechanism of action is not completely understood. Clinical studies have demonstrated that Adrafinil has efficacy as a vigilance promoting agent. It is also has cognitive enhancing potential, and trials on patients with dementing disorders appear warranted. No mention, so back to that paper, no mention of liver toxicity whatsoever. In a research paper that would mention toxicity of the liver if it was found or if it was present. I mean, there's no question about that. This isn't to say that there aren't side effects that come along with Adrafinil, documented ones, because there are. Modafinil too. Look, we see in this figure here that I'm going to put on the screen a list of peer-reviewed reports relating to side effects of Adrafinil, which include dizziness, facial muscle spasms, hypertension, dry mouth, nausea, and some others. Like, you know, it's not entirely scot-free. I mean, the compound can, in susceptible individuals, raise blood pressure, but that's really not unlike many other stimulants. Now, Adrafinil and Modafinil alike, by the way, have the ability through this raising of extracellular dopamine through the dopamine transporter inhibition through frequent high-dose usage, facial muscle spasms. I've actually had this before with Modafinil, Armodafinil, FL-Modafinil, just like all the Afinil analogs, because if you're forcing so much dopamine release very consistently and agonizing particularly D2 receptors, then yes, you run the risk of having facial muscle spasms. But again, this happens at very high doses and with frequent use. And yes, Adrafinil could make you dizzy or lightheaded or make you nauseous, and that's primarily through its dopaminergic mechanism. Like if you high dose mucunapurines, like very high dose, I'm talking about in the 10 gram plus range, you're probably going to get nauseous. If you medium dose compounds like bromocriptine or cabergoline, these are D2 receptor agonists, dopamine agonists, then one of the side effects is nauseousness. But look, nail in the coffin, okay? Ending this here. Unless anybody can provide me, you know, validated literature on this, which I'd be absolutely happy to look at. Nowhere in any validated piece of scientific literature that I can find is Adrafinil deemed liver toxic whatsoever. But what I wanted to highlight here is, like, I don't care if you use Adrafinil or not, but I wanted to highlight this crazy occurrence of the parroted regurgitation phenomenon. How misleading it can be and how it can, like, recruit scores of people that want to sound like they know what they're talking about. And even folks that may have just like read it, not looked into it. Like you got a globally known YouTuber in Derek to make people repeat something that actually isn't true. And I see this everywhere across the internet. So it's important to really be careful about what you hear and then like what you think is true. Like you may want to validate that. Subcutaneous versus intramuscular injections of testosterone is another one of these weird things where you have this parroted regurgitation phenomenon of people saying things that aren't true or haven't been validated, and they're just repeating it in the like the nootropic and the testosterone subreddit. People say that because a few studies came out and said that it's basically going to yield the same levels of serum, you know, total testosterone, that, you know, intramuscular and subcutaneous injections are one and the same and that they're interchangeable. They are not. Subcutaneous tissue disbursement of an oil-based testosterone solution depends on different factors than the muscle disbursement and distribution of an oil-based testosterone solution. I mean, this is just very clear in all the literature, but based on just kind of you're really looking at pharmacokinetics in this particular situation. You know, metabolic factors influence the fatty tissue, the subcutaneous tissue, and its release of testosterone, which is going to inevitably be slower because of that. And then muscle enzymes, blood, movement of the muscle, and a host of other factors influence muscle disbursement of an oil-based testosterone solution. So, you know, that's not going to equal absorption at the same rate and saturation of the androgen receptors after the DHT conversion. It's just not the same. This is why you have guys go on sub-Q after doing IM, their hematocrit was high or whatever, and then they end up feeling shitty, or they lose their libido, or their junk stops working. So that's why. I mean, they're used to this pulsatile, larger, at least at one clip, kind of dose of serum testosterone. The levels may end up the same, but the pharmacokinetics are not the same. Anyway, okay, that's just another example. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. And you got to be careful about what people are postulating as truth and what gets so repeated and seemingly seems authoritative thereafter. Actually, it isn't true. And it's just you're seeing the repeated endpoint of the parroted regurgitation phenomenon. It is a real thing, and you got to watch out for it. But either way, in no way, shape, or form is Adrafinil a liver toxic chemical. You guys being with me, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've gotten some education and some enjoyment out of that. If you're into nootropics, male performance, testosterone, just feeling and performing fucking awesome, please consider subscribing to the channel. Our products, if you want to support us, and right now I got a coupon code for you guys for Torque. Go buy some nootropics that I invented myself. I got 2 stacks that I built. One is called Torque. Yes, it is 30% off right now. I got about 80 bottles to sell at 30% off. The coupon code is 30TORQUE. This is mental energy, stimulation, motivation, memory and processing as well, but it's largely a clean stimulant. You can buy Torque at livecortex.com. You're going to want to get the stuff on auto ship. Very strong and noticeable. Our secondary stack is called Cortex. Been around for just about 9 years. Motivation, verbal fluency, mental energy. It's a dopamine-centric stack. Lastly, if you need to hire me to interpret your blood work, give you advice on TRT, modifying your protocol, help you formulate nootropics regimens that are targeted to you, or anything else related to nootropics, biohacking, energy, within my kind of wheelhouse of specialty, you can do that at livecortex.com. I also wanted to mention we recently just created targeted email response consult. So instead of getting on a call, like I've got calls every day, but some guys don't want to get on the phone and talk for 20 minutes, or rather just send an email with their blood work and their situation and have me respond in a targeted way with protocols. We now have that option at livecortex.com. More content to come this week, and I will talk to you on the next one.